You have GTO Wizard, you study solvers, but you still aren't a profitable player even at low stakes. I was in your same shoes not 3 months ago until I understood what GTO really is and how to use it. If you're studying spots and memorizing hand combinations and frequencies just to get into a real game scenario and have no idea what to do, this video is for you. Once you understand why GTO is a must, you need to understand how to implement it properly. You need to recognize that you're not a computer and you will need to rely on heuristics to have a broad enough strategy that covers 80% or more of the spots that you see in game. Now this video, I'll be breaking down these 3 things. 1, why GTO is a must. 2, you are not a computer. And 3, you need to simplify to excel. Now I'll be doing that by showing you how to study a single spot. And I'll break that down in 3 ways. 1, open a solver to get the node that you study the hand categories, combinations, and frequencies so that you're able to understand how they relate to each other so you can create principles, and those principles create heuristics so that you truly understand how the spot works in a GTO manner. And 3, you ask yourself, is this spot and its hand categories / frequencies correlated to other similar spots? i.e., can I build heuristics? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to switch. This is assuming that you're using GTO Wizard as your solver. So you want to go in to the solutions library on the top left and just make sure that you're playing 6 max. I mean, I'm teaching you how to study a spot overall, so configure it to the game at which you're playing. I play 6 max, and this is something that we are going to do in order to simplify. It's one of the 3 tenets that I teach, and it is you are not a computer and we need to simplify as much as possible. So we are going to be using single sizing for both the flop and the turn. So click your single sizing here, and then we'll find a spot. So most players, you know, the spot that you see the most is big blind, or button versus the big blind. So you'll pick that. And just to show you that you can truly do this on any spot, just going to randomize here. So you see ace 4-3 rainbow. Okay. And so what you'll see, you'll come here, you'll see the big blind's overall strategy. And I'm almost guaranteeing that the majority of you, if you were in the big blind, you would assume that the big blind, because there's an ace high, it just checks over. But in GTO, the big blind here makes a bet 10% of the time. And that's a larger size bet. It's actually an over bet. It's just something that you wouldn't necessarily see. And look, if you go to the multi-size, which is sometimes you like to look and see exactly the different strategies that you can deploy. So you have 2 solved games here, one that uses one size and then one that uses other different sizes. And you'll see here that the button, or the big blind, excuse me, will use a smaller sizing with a larger percentage of its range, still betting all of those hands that it was earlier, but including some, offsuit ace X, some more king X, some more queen, higher queen X, some jack X. When you look at the single size, and it keeps it a little bit more simple. It's the hands that you really need to get the EV that you're looking for here. So, and this is not, you don't really even, and a lot of players, including myself, will play and a lot of players like to just play a check only range from the big blind, which is totally acceptable. You would just need to resolve the tree so that you node lock a checking only node. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to study the way that it's presented to me. But just quickly, it's the same process every time. So here's the node. It's a check or an overbet, and you're like, okay, well, which hands, which combinations, which categories are using the overbet, and what is their just which hands are using the bet, and what is the frequency at which they're betting. Okay, so it's your straights, your sets, some 2-pair, some second pair, some third pair, and your open-ended straight draws. So the majority of it, it's like to really simplify, half of your sets, half of your straights, half of your open-ended straight draws, and that's it. If you did only that, you would be coming close to equilibrium, which is at the end of the day all that you're looking to do. You're not losing EV by not knowing that there are certain third pair hands that bet 25% of the time, but you would be losing EV if you didn't know that you're supposed to bet an overbet or some of your straights and some of your sets. because you're going to be targeting that ace-x. So just to kind of humor my explanation here, say we do the overbet. What hands are calling? So the overbet, and zoom out, and it is all of the majority of your ace-x hands, majority of your pocket pairs. So you're looking for which hands are starting to become indifferent, because it gives you an understanding of how a person should think in game, and you that way you know what they should be doing properly. So you can see here that ace-x is becoming indifferent. Ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, ace 8, ace 7, but the ace 6 and ace 6, ace 6, ace 5, ace 4, all of that is calling because of the backdoor straight draws that they have. Okay, and we have, let's see, a lot of these like middle hands, like the suited connectors. What's good to know here is that the 5x, your 5x is calling all hands, but your middle pair is not. So your 4x is not. And you just want to do this quickly. You don't have to get too in depth, but you will then, so you got a notepad next to you, like I always do. And so what can we draw from this? So we want to write down the solution, or the spot button first. Big blind, ace, low, ace 4 3, ace 4 3, rainbow. And then you want to say big blind leads small, leads low frequency with 50% of sets, straights, and OE. Okay. And the button has all, only, range versus raise. You think, why is that? It's because the top end of the range, if you look over here, it's all controlled by the button. It's got all of the highest equity hands, your sets, your straights. The button does too, but the big blind, because of this polarizing bet, has just much more of it that it's representing. It has the 6-5 offsuit. It has the 7-6 offsuit. So you just remember that because of the range advantage that the big blind has, button's only going to call. And then you can go through the rest of this node, or the rest of this line, and see how, if the big blind bets big on the flop, how the hand goes through. So we'll do it very quickly. Just again, pick a random one. This is a rainbow, and you'll see that the hands that you raised with before now really double down and bet big again. So it's a overbet on the flop, and it's an overbet on the turn. And you'll think, okay, well, which hands am I doing this with? You're doing this with straights, sets, 2 pair, and your draws. And you're betting at a very high frequency for an overbet, 41% of the time. So you're really applying pressure. This card is essentially a brick, but I think the worst card in the deck for your hand at this point would probably be an ace as the big blind. See how the betting frequency decreases, but it's still that same sizing. So let's see. You just want to play around and see with, so that's a top, it's a board pairing, the top of the ace pairs. You want to see if the middling pair hand of a 4 hits. Is it the same size? Okay, yes. So it's safe to assume that when the big blind goes big on the flop, it's going to go big again on the turn, and the button again will just be calling, and the only sizing for the big blind is all in on the river. So it's super simple to remember. Instead of having to look, if you look at all of the different ways you could do it for multiple sizes, it just gets much too complex to stay GTO oriented. So yeah, you look at that and you say, okay, well, which hands are doing, which hands are making this action? Quads, full houses, trips, top pair, and then your draws. So you're balanced, you're at high frequency. So it's 80% of the time with the top, top pair and up, and then say 75% of the time with your open-ended straight draws through your combo draws. And if you can remember that, it's a big sizing and that frequency, then you're going to be okay. You're going to, if you're playing against a solver, maybe over the long term, it will be able to figure out that you're missing some things. But if you're playing against another human opponent, they will not be able to discern your GTO strategy from a multiple size, multiple frequency solution. But what this allows you to do is this allows you to study this spot and know, if you see this in game, you know exactly how to react and the frequencies. It's like, okay, If I see this ace high board with the low low ace 4-3, I know that the big blind's betting huge or betting over bets with half of its straights, half of its sets, half of its open-ended straight draws, and then checking the rest. Okay, you know that, and then you know again on the turn it's doing the same thing. It's betting an overbet size with the top of its range and its draws about 80 to 75% of the time. So just a large percentage of the time. And then same thing, it goes all in with the top of its range, quads, full houses, and straights, and some under pairs as bluffs. And again, you want to dive a little bit deeper, but for a short introductory video, this is how you do it. And then you'll say, okay, well, what if, in the other 90% of the time you're checking? So the button recognizes the fact that the button, just in the sizing alone here, recognizes the fact that it has a slight range advantage over you as the big blind, but not by much. If it did, it would use a much larger sizing to target different hands that you could have. But because the ranges are very similar, it's going to go with a smaller sizing. And it's almost going to be a range bet. You're betting ace X, you're checking your strongest under pairs or your pocket pairs, and then so again, nothing is pure betting. The thing that you want to notice is nothing purely bets. It's all betting and checking. So even your strongest hand, which is pocket aces at this point, I guess 2-5 is pretty strong. You don't have that, the big blind does. Even that's not a pure bet. Ace king suited, almost a pure bet. There's no pure bet, so you recognize that, okay, no matter what, I should be betting and checking on this flop as the button. Some more than others, but if I can remember that I'm supposed to bet a third pot about 50% of the time, even that you'll be okay. Like, you can check out the EV. You just think, okay, you come in here and you go, okay, if I have a set, I'm most of the time betting a third. Top pair, most of the time betting a third. Open-ended straight draws. You're thinking, okay, how am I being most balanced? The hands that you do not want to bet are the hands that are in the worst spot versus a check raise or a small bet raise, right? So think, king, queen suited, king, jack suited, kings, queens, jacks. None of those hands want to get check raised at all because they have a lot of value. But on this board with the ace high, if you're getting check raised from the big blind, it's just, you're in an awful spot. So say, you put in the small bet, we're going to look at king X here, and then we get check raised. Big blind's folding all of this king X, all of it, and most of its pocket pairs. So you really want to refrain from betting those. And if you can remember, okay, I'm betting about betting top pair the majority of the time. I'm not betting my pocket pairs, and I'm not betting king X. Everything else bets about 60% or 50% of the time. Again, you're fine. So say we bet, you expect to get raised here by those hands that were supposed to lead that might have not led. So if you get check raised by the big blind, it's on those type of hands that you've already studied. Sets, straights, open-ended straight draws. Exactly what we see here. Bottom pair with a good kicker. Boom. Say we just call. And now here's where the turn on these type of boards gets really interesting. So this brings in many straights for the big blind. This is a great hand for the big blind. A great card for the big blind. It brings in backdoor, flush draw possibilities. It brings in straights. It brings in sets. So because of that, because it has such a range advantage and it has way more 2x, which would be the straights, it's got way more 6-7. It's just got way more nut advantage. So it's able to bet small to put in some distress on this larger range. And the same thing in GTO theory, when you have a range that has a much higher ceiling, and is going into, so for example, the big blind here has a range that has just an overwhelmingly amount of combinations that beat the button. But the button does have some great hand combinations, like pocket aces. It does have 6-7, so it has the straight. Like, there are some good combinations. So the button will use a polarizing size of value and bluffs, as opposed to the big blind range betting almost its entire, it's all of its 7x, all of its 8x, all of its 6x. So again, you just want to remember, if I'm If I get to this spot and I can remember that about 50% of the time I'm supposed to donk for a small sizing, you're doing something, you're playing a GTO strategy, and you will get check raised quite often on this type of a board. When you think, okay, to be optimal, most players are not re-raising these sizes, so you can expect to not get check raised as much. And this video is kind of getting longer, but basically he's going to be check raising straights and sets and combo draws. Again, that's the theme for this board. Straights, sets, combo draws. Want to put money in the pot. Call, and the big blind is going to polarize its sizing at the end here. Bigger sizing with all of its best hands. Button will re-raise with sets, and that's it. Or straights, and that's it. And then you're going to jam your straights. Pretty straightforward. Now we want to make sure that on a different turn sizing or a different turn card, a brick turn card, what would happen here? Let's do like a card that would be good for the big blind's range, or good for the button's range, because it might want to polarize. Oh fuck! I want to check, bet, call, jack, and there you go. If it were to bet, it would bet really big, and like the solver likes to do, it likes to bet and really charge the draws. So it's going to bet an overbet size, and you're going to be calling with your straights, your sets, two pair, and pretty much folding everything else. Not raising too much. And the river brings in the straights. We've already polarized, so it folds out a lot of the bluffs, and it's jamming sets, straights, and top pair. So if you can remember that on this board, straights, sets, and two pair are the value. And they're going to be betting for a very big size on the turn, depending on the card. So here we go. 8, bring in potential backdoor flush draw. Turn, check, bet. You can remember that on a check bet on this board, big blind, the button's going to want to go big. It's going big with its sets, top pair, and its combo draws. It's not doing it too often, only 25%. It's going to go for a geometric sizing so that I can get everything in on the river, and the big blind is. So what can you draw from this? Okay, so now we have done a quick research on the spot. We know that on this board with an ace high board with the low, so a 4-3 rainbow, we know that about 20% of the time or less, the big blind is donking for a overbet sizing, and we know that the button will be calling any of those sizings. It overbets with sets, it overbets with two pair and straights about 50% of the time. And the open-ended straight draws, it does again about 50% of the time. The button will just call that bet, and the big blind will continue to use a polarizing sizing throughout the entirety of the hand to get an all-in on the river. And the same thing with the button. When check 2, the bet size will be 1/3, and it should get check raised a lot of the time from the big blind. So when it doesn't get check raised, it goes polar with a geometric bet sizing so that I can get it all in on the river as well. And the same thing, when you're in the big blind and he bets small or medium, you know which hands that you're going to be check raising with. It's the same that you should be donking with. Sets, straights, top pair, open-ended straight draws. You're going to be using a larger sizing. If you don't, then he's going to polarize, and then he's going to try to get all in. Both players are using the same hand class categories to try to get all-ins on the river. That's just one spot, but that's much easier to remember how to play that hand GTO optimally than it is to remember all these different types of sizings. If you were using, multiple sizings throughout the hand. Now, what we can do is we can go to another flop. Ready? Go to another flop. See if this if it's similar. So ace high board, go with low rainbow or two-tone. Maybe the two-tone similar. We don't know. So no, we can identify now that on a two-tone board, big blind does not want to get polar. Is it the two-tone that does it? Let's see. Yes, it's when it's an ace high, low rainbow. Big blind wants to get polar with its sets, straights, two pair, open-ended straight draws. They're open-ended straight draws, or gut shots. But and the same thing works, right? We check, and it bets 1/3 again. You're raising about 10% with those same hands: straights, sets, two pairs, gut shots. And the same thing. You just call, indicating that you don't have one of those hands, and any other card comes, you're going to be checking the majority of your range like so, and it's going to be polarizing with the geometric sizing. You understand what I'm saying? This is how you're supposed to use GTO to understand the game. This is just a very surface level example on just the fundamentals and framework for how this should work moving forward. But I will be creating a video series that dives in deeper on different hands, different sizes, hand classes, frequencies, all those good kind of things. So many of you guys do not have the time to spend hours each day studying a solver, and that's okay. That's why I'm making a playlist of spots that I researched, just like they do in professional study groups at the elite level. So subscribe to my channel if you're interested in this kind of content, and comment if you've had similar problems to those I've described above. I'll be making more and more content surrounding solvers, GTO, and poker moving forward, and I look to speaking to each and every one of you guys in the following videos.